Hello, retail is complicated. For over 20 years, I was the chief technology architect for the Association for Retail Technology Standards, called ARTS. They are now under the OMG/retail umbrella. In that role, I worked with over 1,500 subject matter experts. They've trained me in all aspects of retail. When I came to this realization, I decided that I needed to share that knowledge with you. This is the force that drove me to write this book.
Picture is worth 1,000 words by Henrik Ibsen. That means that there are over 300,000 words in the pictures in this book. That having been said, I couldn't possibly do a normal write-up explaining every nuance in all of those pictures. If I did, this book would be several thousand pages. So I tried to make the most of the pictures being self-explanatory. Now, this is based on the work from the Association for Retail Technology Standards, which I worked with for over 25 years. In that work, there are somewhere over 1,000 use cases. In addition, these standards cover somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 elements and attributes for retail. That represents about 90% of the information used in retail. If you want to move to the unified commerce world, and that's your next world, this work is not just useful, but absolutely necessary. Worldwide, there are millions of people that work in retail technology. So where did they learn about all of its complexity? That information is in Arts for Retail, using technology to turn your consumers into customers and make a profit. Because there's an enormous amount of detailed information in this book, I've broken it into 3 volumes. It starts with The Road to Unified Commerce in an Agile Microservices World. It then moves into the customer lifecycle and finishes with How do I make a profit? Besides, it also adds in things dealing with the supply chain, and if you get into the hypermarket, the food service and forecourt areas.
Over time, by implementing a myriad of applications, one at a time, that support their business, retailers have created a complex architecture of applications linked together to share information that is almost impossible to maintain and often provides inconsistent, even inaccurate information. This is called a spaghetti bowl. This is the problem that services solve. They break this monolithic complexity into well-defined independent modules that can be updated independently from each other. Services allow the isolation of each business function and then enable individual replacement without impacting the other business functions. But to make this happen, several things must come into alignment. First, and most important, is to have a common standardized communication messages. By having a common set, one can plug and unplay individual services without impacting other services. The essence of this book is to help you make this happen.
So, Volume 1, The Road to Unified Commerce in an Agile Microservices World, covers the components of an Agile world. It starts with a history of what arts is and what kinds of works they created. To keep everything consistent across all of the arts work, a common set of definitions was built. It then moves on to talk about fundamentals of infrastructure, including security and privacy. Now it moves along to the development of the retail architecture itself. From its monolithic beginnings through the services-oriented architecture on to the modern agile microservices world. Now that we have the base architecture, we move on to the services that run on this architecture. And that leads us to the unified commerce model that brings in other things like mobile, social, IoT, robots, and artificial intelligence.
So chapter 1 is, what is retail technology? Traditionally, business people and technology people were separated. However, in today's world, business people and technology people are tightly integrated. This book helps with that business paradigm. It starts with strategy. Strategy is defined by the people running the company. The business architectures then find the set of value streams that tie to that strategy. From there, the value streams supporting various business processes are identified. The people and technology are then used to execute those processes. Now, to complete the loop, the business intelligence is used to monitor and measure the execution of those processes back to the strategy. Traditionally, a store was a building that's sitting on the corner where you went to buy things. However, the nature of today's retail is the absolute requirement to be able to sell your customers no matter how they wish to buy. This dramatically expands the concept of a store way beyond the brick and mortar models to include websites, mobile, kiosks, etc. Chapter 2. What is art? To support this new world, arts created these pillars of retail technology. It started in 1994 with a common POS reference data model. That data model today has grown to cover the enterprise and has over 800 tables and 6,000 attributes. The next pillar, if you move into the services world, you absolutely need a common message model. That is, if you call something an item and I call it a product, we won't be able to understand each other. These message models solve this communication issue. There are over 20 standard messages that cover 95% of the interfaces in retail. The next pillar supports your need for a common set of device interfaces. UPOS is one of the most commonly adopted standards in the world, and it covers around 40 different devices. The last pillar is the ability to buy new applications. In the arts inventory, there are 11 RFPs available. They are incredibly example. For example, one company got a POS RFP on the street in 12 man days. This saved them well over $100,000 over starting with a blank sheet of paper. These 4 pillars are the foundation of arts. Now they are under the Object Management Group at omg.org/retail. Chapter 3. How does a retailer communicate? When you move to a modern microservices architecture, you will need to be able to split your application into 2 major components. The first is the infrastructure interface. This interface allows you to securely locate and connect applications without knowing where the application is running. This is the essence of the microservice world, and companies like Amazon's AWS are key players in this world. The second part is the application interface. This covers doing the work you expect from the application. By splitting them into 2 components, you will allow one to upgrade the application in real time without having to reboot the entire application. You simply add a new application and it runs in a new container. We've talked several times about having a common set of terminologies. Chapter 4 covers some of these arts definitions. It helps in ontology, the secret to inter-process communication. One of the key components of communication is speaking the same language. This chapter talks about some of the key terms used in all of the arts world. An interesting byproduct of the ARC standards is one term means the same thing no matter if you're talking to a device, talking to an application, or talking to the database. This is the extensive library of arts work. Arts created over 7 blueprints. Now these blueprints are in effect requirement stocks that help us drive the creation of the other standards. In the process of building them, we created a lot of design documents such as task state diagrams. On top of that, we integrate with other standards group. For example, there's a payment standards body out there, and we have a payment integration report to tell how to integrate to that effort. We've written best practices reports because we wanted arts standards to be standard, and so we use these to help guide the development of our work. There are over 29 different message schemas in the arts inventory. These cover the lines on that spaghetti diagram we showed to begin with. There's over 40 different devices covered in the Unified POS standard. The newest one of those is a robot standard, and it's not covered in the book, but it's the newest standard. The data model. Of course, the data model is where we all began. There is one operational data model that today covers the entire enterprise. It has over 800 tables in it and 8,000 attributes. On top of that, there's a data warehouse model with 3 data marts in it. We helped retailers buy these applications by writing a set of requests for proposals. These are so effective that the first one was the point of sale RFP, and the first retailer who got that out, they figured that they got it accomplished in 12 man days, and they saved over $100,000 by using this standard. The total of these represents somewhere between 15 and 20,000 attributes and elements. They cover over somewhere around 90% of the operational side of retail. This is overwhelming. So how do I find out about this information? In one case, I train people all over the world about how this works. The number of retail stores represented by this training exceeds over 100,000 stores. In addition, you can learn a lot of this in this book, Arts for Retail.
Volume 2 covers the most important aspects of any retail organization, the customer. It starts with the customer life cycle. It begins with the population, moves it through the phases to become a customer. It moves on to help get a deep understanding of the customer's behavior, their demographic and psychographics. To know how well you're doing with it, then it explains how to verify and drive your success by tying your customer interactions with your business intelligence, which ties to your business strategy. Next, to be successful, you must understand why you are in business. In addition, that requires the customer needs to know you exist and what you are selling. A key point with this requires that you know why a customer comes into your store. Now you have a consumer in your store. You must turn this consumer into a customer by selling them something. This starts with how the store is laid out. Each retailer must understand how a consumer moves through their store. Typically, consumers move to the right when they enter the store. And to better understand that movement, video analytics helps set up the store. One cool thing with video analytics is one can understand where consumers stop, what they look at when they pick up something, and then when they move on to checkout. From this, you can evaluate your store drives, impulse, and affinity buy. Next, how do you pay for the day? The consumer finally decides they've picked their items and want to pay for the purchase. In this mobile world, how and where do they pay for their purchase? The answer is the POS, the point of sale. I am the Wizard of POS. Today, the POS is no longer the physical device located at the store exit. Yet the POS is the lifeblood of real retail. Now you get to see where the Wizard of POS came from. How did we get to where we are today with the point of sale? What is a transaction? How does it support today's unified commerce world? How do you communicate these transactions to all of the systems that need this information? What is POS log? What does a modern Agile microservices point of sale look like? And finally, what support is available to help buy a point of sale? That would be an RFP.
Okay, so we have all of these standards. How do we use them? And Chapter 5 covers the customer lifecycle, starting with the population at the bottom of the pyramid. We then try to move some people out of the population and to become visitors to our website or to our stores. Once we get them in the stores, we want them to buy something. So they start shopping. At this point, they haven't actually bought anything, but that's the next step. A vast majority of sales are repeat customers. This group is the icing on the cake and the people we want to cater to. So how do we move people up this pyramid? Besides advertisers, there are people called influencers. These people may not actually buy anything, but their reviews and recommendations can influence others to move up the pyramid. This leads us to Chapter 6, Getting a Consumer into Your Store. There are 3 steps into getting a consumer into your store. First, they have to know you exist. A lot of companies fail because their potential customers don't know they exist, what they sell, or how to get in touch with them. This is where merchandise planning and advertising come into play. You must figure out what your customers desire and let them know you have those items. Advertising helps drive consumers into your store. In addition, you need to get your customers back into your store. This is handled with target marketing and customer loyalty programs. ART supports these efforts with their comparison shopping engine, customer loyalty, and product content management standards. Chapter 7, Turning the Consumer into a Customer by Selling Them Something. Now we have a consumer in our store. How do we turn them into a customer? First, the store must be laid out to make it easy for you to find what you're looking for. If you have a problem, you can ask an associate for help, or you can check for availability and location on a stock checker. Once you find out your items, you can then either do a self-checkout or go through a traditional checkout stand. In either checkout method, you report the sale and tax information to the appropriate areas. In addition, a digital receipt can be sent directly to your home device. These are a sample of the interface standards in the ART's inventory needed to turn a consumer into a customer. As you can see, there's a lot there.
So now we get to the most important part. How do I make a profit? How does a company know if it's doing fine? How is this information transferred around inside the company? It's basically a control transaction. What are some of the KPIs to help know I'm making a profit? How does my workforce fit into this profit picture? Next, it covers global retailing. The supply chain starts with the factory or the supplier or the manufacturer and gets the products all the way to the retailer and then on to the customer. To make sure the factory is in compliance with all things that is going on in today's world requires the ability to do factory audits and record the results of those audits. In addition, in today's world, it requires traceability to be able to track an item from the customer all the way back to the store, all the way back to the manufacturer or the farm, so that if something happens, you can find out where it came from. Next, we cover the hypermarket. Most of all of this work covers any aspect of selling anything. Fundamentally, if you sell something, you are in retail, and all this work applies to you. That brings us into this hypermarket, where we add food service and forecourt. There are some food service unique components, such as in the kitchen. Those are covered in the self-service order interface work. In the fresh item management world, one deals with serialized items and lots, individualized item labeling, recall notifications, kitchen device interfaces, and all of these are covered by the ART standards. The other area where there are unique components is the forecourt. In the forecourt, it exists the fueling point, the tank gauge, the transaction, the history view. These are all covered by the forecourt components of the OMG/ART's data model and in POS log for transferring this information around.
Chapter 8, How do you pay for your purchase? Or POS, the heart of retail. Now we get to the fun part, getting the customers to pay for the purchase. This effort occurs at the point of sale, a cash register, a mobile phone, etc. In ART, there are 11 capabilities needed to check out a customer. In this model, they are called engines, as each has its own set of complicated operations to perform. These 11 engines must be supported no matter what type of entry is used, a website, a cell phone, a POS, a robot, etc. This book talks about service-oriented architecture, but that has moved on to the microservices architecture. How do they relate? As you can see, they are all subsets of each other. Basically, a microservice architecture splits the SOA model into two pieces. As mentioned earlier, the first is the infrastructure. This allows one to create a service and load it into a cloud independently of what function it performs. The second component of the function is the function it performs. The beauty is one can update the functional component without impacting the infrastructure component. This talks about both as the SOA model. Chapter 10, Making a Profit. Making a profit is why you're in business. Chapter 10, Make a Profit, takes you through the process of finding out if you have made a profit. We talked about retail transactions with respect to the point of sale. This chapter starts with and adds a tender control transaction. These transactions record non-sales transaction movement of money. Things like moving the money out of one till into another, or paying a window washer for cleaning the window from the till. In addition to non-sales transaction, there are events which occur that may not require a response. For example, when a cashier moves from one point of sale to another in a cashier accountability mode, there is a control transaction recording the movement of the till from the first POS to the second POS. Each POS will create their own control transaction, one POS for the removal and the second POS for the insertion. Now you've tracked all the money movement, how do you tell if you've made a profit? Well, there are two ways. First is the traditional financial reconciliation, where they match the money coming in with the money going out. So to track the money going out, you must closely monitor your inventory. This is where inventory control transactions occur. They are designed to record the movement of goods in and out of inventory. There's a second way to use business intelligence to determine your profitability. There are a large number of KPIs, or key performance indicators, that can track all kinds of performance. Using the right KPI for your business helps you adjust the direction your company is going to increase your profitability. One of the biggest expenses is your workforce. There's the extensive support for managing your workforce. The workforce area is all about scheduling and monitoring your workforce. This isn't about managing the HR functions around your force, but the operational side. Chapter 9 talks about ART's SOA interface support. Now, when ART was created, SOA was the latest architecture model. It has now been moved to a microservices model, which we'll discuss in a minute. For years, software was built as one big monolithic application, but it failed on its own success. These monolithic applications were like a cruise ship. They were large, and to change directions took a long distance. But modern retail needs to change directions like a speedboat. Along came this thing called a cloud. A cloud allowed one to move these big applications into the internet and thus be able to change them on a quicker basis. This led to the service-oriented architecture. The problem with SOA is it contains both the application and its infrastructure. The idea to split them into components gave birth to the microservices world. In the microservices world, the infrastructure is managed by a group like Amazon Web Services. On the application, the application still needs a well-defined interface, so we're back to the standard interfaces created by ART. Now, ART did create two specific models aimed at the microservices world. One is a retail transaction service, and it is an interface for a point of sale to a kiosk, for example. And it divides the work done by the POS into discrete steps, with each message for each being based on the POS log schema. With this, you have the ability to run your application from a cell phone with the details being worked out on a separate server. This server being one of the 11 engines we talked about in the POS area. The second model is a self-service order interface. It expands on the RTS model to give a fully supported kiosk beyond just selling things. And in addition, I have created a course to teach you how to create a real microservice environment. This course is at converselink.com, and it is called Retail Technology Architecture. The remaining chapters cover food service and forecourt specific extensions. In food service, you have devices to talk to, such as grills. You must also deal with things like fresh item management, being able to make sure you don't sell food that's out of date, or country of origin labeling in order to be able to track back to the history of a particular food item. Then it deals with the specific nuances of ordering things like pizza with half pepperoni and half hamburger. On the forecourt side, you have to deal with credit card terminals at the dispenser, printers, coin dispensers, and acceptors, then reporting things like blending and drive-offs.
As I said, there's an enormous amount of information, detailed information in this book, and that's why it's been broken into 3 volumes. And it is a Kindle book, so you can download it from this site. You pay $25 for the 3 volumes, and you get $1 million worth of knowledge created by over 1,600 subject matter experts who taught me this stuff.
Thank you. I am the Wizard of POS. My name is Richard Halter. Please check out my book, Art for Retail, Using Technology to Turn Your Consumers into Customers and Make a Profit. It's available on Kindle. Thank you.